This is Xiaomi's top-end, top-dog flagship. It's called the 14 Ultra, and what it is a camera powerhouse of a smartphone, or at least the specs would say it is. It's got a lot of promise here, but it also has a lot of hype, and I want to try and cut through that. You probably know all about this phone already if you're watching this video because it's old kind of news. The time I got this, it's already been announced and everyone's all seen all about it from Mobile World Congress. But this is my take on it here. And just for those spec lovers out there, I'm going to mention a few specs, but don't worry, it's not going to go for long. And that is, it's got 4 50 megapixel cameras on the rear, up to 5 times optical zoom, 32 megapixel camera on the front, powered by the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3. You probably already knew that. It's top of the line. It's a flagship. Let's take a look at this promising looking phone. So this is what is included in the box. We have a bit of paperwork that's in Chinese, this being the import version, our case, Type A to Type C, 90-watt charger. Now I did buy this version here, the Chinese version, imported it from Trading Shenzhen. I use them a lot. They are very good. It took about, all up, around about 11 days or so to arrive. And the 14 Ultra camera kit, which you can also buy from Trading Shenzhen. You can get it for the global model too. In fact, the first pre-orders, it was included. So we get a case here that has the fake kind of leather to the back of it. The white here, I'm worried about it getting a little bit dirty later on. This is a button here for the rings that you can change. So it comes with this silver one, but you can easily slot those off. And this is making it more like a real camera with interchangeable lenses. And you can put on the adapter, which is the other one here, this one. Okay, you can put that on, and that will then allow you to put on filters too. You can screw on filters like a UV filter or whatever you want. There's a gold one there too. Now, inside this little box here, we have the wrist strap for the case, so you don't end up dropping it. And this is, well, it's all in Chinese there, so that doesn't really matter looking at that. And of course, the little part that slots in. So not hooked up with Bluetooth now like the previous model with the 13 Ultra, but this is hardwired, so the latency is going to be, well, you won't have any latency issues. This is where it locks in. There's a little latch there, so you flick that down. That locks it into the case. And then we have our 2-stage button, which I'm really happy with. So you can press down just a little, like a proper camera, to focus first, and then take your photo. This is for our zoom, and this dial here we can configure. Now, I've got it set up with the default, which is exposure. Very handy, because I think that's the one I would use the most anyway. Most people probably would too. Record button. Build quality of this is all right. It has this suede here inside, which is great. And the silver, and there's a Type-C port. Now, the internal battery in this is 1500 milliamp hours. You can just see it written inside here, and it's going to be charging then the phone at the same time, which is good. Extends our battery when you're taking a lot of shots and recording a lot of video. And why I say the build is good, I have noticed that the finish of the paint with the silver hairs, it's not wonderful. This is plastic, so it could be a little bit better there. But otherwise, I'm being a little bit fussy here, but it is very nice to have, and you can see, of course, the Xiaomi branding. I'll show you what it looks like now on the phone. So the phone's thickness is 9.2 millimeters, and Xiaomi's claim is 219 grams is what it weighs. According to my scales, however, 230. You can never trust them, especially Xiaomi, with their weights and things. They always seem to have this special magical scales that round down, and when they measure thicknesses, it also rounds down. Anyway, let's have a look at the grip, and then the case on. You're looking at a total phone weight here of, whoa, 326 grams. So that's pretty heavy and bulky, as I'll show you. So it just simply slots in like so, and you flick the little lock on there, and that's latched into place. That's not going anywhere, and you can see a little status LED flashing green just then. It now is stating that it's quick charging. That is from that extra case. And camera grip has now been detected. So I've got a few options there for it. You can update the firmware. Then you've got the configuration for the buttons. So the button can be all those different things there. The dial you can change from exposure to focus to white balance to lots of things there. Again, very good. Shortcut button and the zoom there, continuous zoom, or switch your focal length, your different cameras, which is good. But how chunky does it make it? Well, very. Look at it now, okay? It's pretty chunky, but this grip is really nice. Using it, it's very comfortable, and it really becomes and feels like I am using now a 100% dedicated, not a DSLR, but more like a point-and-shoot camera that feel to it, okay? Like one of those Canon power shots that everyone had. Remember those? Yep, and phones killed them. But anyway, we've got the dials there. You can easily get to that button. Feels very good pressing that in, and I'll just show it in action too, okay? So you can see, you can just focus on the stats that I'm looking at here. Take a photo. You can then adjust the exposure and the zoom too. So obviously, it depends what camera you're in. Okay, I'm in the document mode. That was why. All right, so now I can zoom in and zoom out there. So very good and great addition to the phone. And of course, if you're getting that free with the global version, if you pre-ordered, then that's fantastic. So then onto our build quality. It is very good, and Xiaomi has had good build quality with their flagships for many years now that I've been covering them. Well, since the Mi 2S, in fact. You can see the Xiaomi there. Now there's a nice texture to this fake leather. I just worry about how this is going to wear long term, because I've had this kind of stuff before in my pocket, and you eventually get like brown areas where it rubs with your pockets and your jeans and whatnot. So I don't think it's probably the best color to have in your pocket or to use without a case. So the metal frame curved around the edges here. You can see that camera module. Look at it. It just sticks out massively there, and it just dominates. That camera module is, yeah, it's interesting. Well, at least they made it look like a camera. I don't love it. I don't hate it either. What do you think of it? Do you think it's ugly? Is it just too much? Should they make it a little bit smaller if they could? Well, I don't think they really can with all those cameras and hardware in there. So we've got loudspeaker at the top. There are dual loudspeakers with this. Down the bottom, we have our other loudspeaker, Type-C port. SIM tray takes 2 nano SIMs, microphone, antenna lines here. Yes, we get video out with this. It's USB 3.2, I believe it is, and it's just the Gen 1 spec, so it's the 5 gigabits per second, but certainly beats USB 2 speeds that we used to have with Xiaomi actually not that long ago. It's only the last year or so they decided to up that performance. So the build of it is excellent. It feels really good in hand. Metal buttons here. It's a bit heavy, it's a bit chunky, so they claim, of course, that 220 grams when it's in fact 230. Fingerprint reader, so inbuilt, of course, optical, and yeah, good. No real complaints with it. Height is okay. I wish it was about here, about there, but it's good because a lot of brands put them right down the bottom and it feels a little uncomfortable. I can easily get to those power buttons, volume up and down. Bezels here look okay. So we've got 32 megapixel camera at the front. And of course it is running HyperOS, Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, 16 gigs of RAM with this, 512 gigabytes of storage. And of course the cameras, so all of them are 50 megapixels here on the red, all 4 cameras. Now you can see this one is our main camera. Now this is the new type of sensor, which is the new 1-inch type sensor. It has a variable aperture, so I'm just going to go along and adjust this. So from a wide 1.63, that's it, not fully wide open. There it is, fully wide open, okay. And then I'll just go along, so anywhere in between, all various different stages, you can adjust it right up to a closed f4.0. Ultra wide's 12 millimeters, which is great because a lot of them aren't that wide. Some of them are 14 millimeters or 13, so good to see that. And the focal distance of these now is a little bit closer compared to the previous model. 3 times optical zoom and a 5 times optical. This is a periscopic, so that's the 3 times right there. This is our 5 times. That's the ultra wide here. As mentioned, all 50 megapixels. So improvements with them, and of course co-engineered with Leica. As you can see, Leica branding everywhere. So I wanted to jump in and just show you some of the settings you get with this camera, because Xiaomi's gone all out with this, what you can do. So you can shoot in vlog. There's the option right here. If you go into pro mode, I'll show you that in just a second. So frame rate up to 120 frames per second. Yes, that's brilliant. Resolution up to 8K, but 24 or 30 frames per second. No 60 yet. I think that's a little demanding, too demanding for that. Super macro with video mode as well. Teleprompter. Motion tracking with the autofocus, exposure can be controlled too, but you probably want to go in the pro mode for that. So a lot of settings there. Photo, you've got HDR, of course. You've got your Leica settings, so Leica Vibrant, Leica Authentic, Portrait. You have their Leica Portrait, or you can go to Master Portrait, which is Xiaomi's own. Personally, I find Leica Portrait to be a little bit too moody, a little bit too contrasty. I've been using Xiaomi's one, which I think is slightly better. You can select the different cameras you want, of course, down here. So ultra wide, zoom camera, 3.2 optical, the 5. Once you go up to 30 times, it will automatically use the AI mode. Okay, once you go over there, there's no little button anymore to enable it because it is actually done through the settings now. So once it's on 30, it tells you here, ultra zoom beta. It's using AI to improve the clarity of it, which, yeah, for me is not really working that good, but I'll show you samples. later in this video here too. So portrait, you got all those different options, document mode, more, there's a lot in here, director mode, night mode, 50 megapixel mode. But we'll go into the pro mode. That's probably the one that most people want. This is what I do and use. So you've got your sonograph here. You have your histogram that you can enable to through the settings. You can see right here. Okay, so histogram's there, sonogram, focus peaking, aspect ratio, and this is where you can shoot in log. So if you're going to be color grading, say 4K 60 is your max, you can shoot with that with log, no 8K with that. But if you want 8K, that of course is there. Grayed out because I have log enabled. Okay, so there's 8K and yes, at 30 frames per second. That is good. So this is currently in the video mode, pro mode. You've got all the different options right here. So ISO, aperture, shutter rate, and your white balance or whatnot. And here we go. This is now the pro mode. So you've got, again, the Leica options there, Leica Authentic, Leica Vibrant. And if you enable this here, you can then go into your JPEG, the Ultra 50 megapixel mode there too as well. And through the settings, there's even more in here. Okay, you can see a lot more options. There's plenty in there. Image stabilization can be disabled too, but only in the pro mode for video. Dolby Vision, another really good one to have. Audio settings, so you can put on a immersive audio or smart noise reduction depending on what you want. Live in-air monitor too, another one that's great for people that shoot a lot of video. So plenty of options in here. Really good to see. You can preserve the settings. You can even shoot with the screen off. That'll be great using it with the grip and the case. And that is about it. I know there's more in there. Yes, you've got RAW. You've got a lot of different options all in there too. So that is great. You can see other options we have here. Okay, quick snap back into the video mode. And that is the camera app. Later on, I'll show you the samples. So the display, let's talk a little bit about that. HDR10 Plus display. It is, of course, an AMOLED 6.73 inches. It's a Quad HD screen too. So resolution is 3200 by 1440, giving us 522 ppi, so it looks very sharp. Now, we do have a glass on this that is curved on all edges, including the top. Some people don't like that. I would prefer it to be completely flat. It's a little bit like a kind of rounded bubble kind of effect to it. Well, not really. It's still a very, very good screen here, 120 hertz. Now, you get a lot of options under display here. It's very responsive to touch. I've had no issues. It's been really good. And you'll see here that we do have your typical options here. Color scheme, you can have it in the original Pro Color, Vivid, Saturated, Advanced settings. And you can use adaptive colors if you want, or you can put it back into the original, adjust the white balance a little. The bezels around the outside, well, they're not the smallest, but they're pretty good. They're not bad at all. And what are we looking at for brightness? So I've done some testing of this. Their claim is 1000 nits in the high brightness mode. I've not been able to measure that. Just get over 800 and 3000 peak out in the sun or HDR mode. And you can see just in indoors now compared to the S24 Ultra there and the iPhone 15 Pro Max, that I think it's the duller screen of the three of these phones. And of course, I did test this in direct sunlight. You can see now. It looked to me like the brightest and clearest is, in fact, the Galaxy S24 Ultra. Second place for me was the iPhone, and third, the Xiaomi 14 Ultra. So the screen brightness, it's good, but it isn't 3000 nits. I believe that is just marketing BS from Xiaomi. One last thing on the display. What about banding, flicker, fluidity, and all that? Very, very good. I don't see any banding. I don't see any flicker either. Everything is so snappy, so smooth. That's what you'd expect out of this kind of spec. And it is running Hyper OS, okay? This is version 1.0.3, but the Chinese ROM. So only English, only Chinese. However, I can confirm that some of the things that are often issues is that its 5G is working. Yes, okay, that is great. But because it's a global ROM, there are other things that aren't. So Android Auto does not work, and it will not work unless you unlock the bootloader, and maybe later we can flash a Xiaomi EU ROM. I don't know about that. Maybe a global, not sure. We'll have to see what kind of happens. But if you want and need that, go for the global version, of course. Everything else seems to be fine for me. 4G is also working great with no problems. So it's very fast, really fluid, everything. Now, the Chinese ROM here compared to the global, this is where you see another difference. You can have a lot of Chinese bloatware. Now, Trading Shenzhen were nice enough to go and de-bloat it a little for me. And there's just a few other apps in there, but you're probably going to see a lot. You're going to see maybe about 10 or so Chinese apps, but you can remove them, you can clean things up, and then we are good. So this is the last, or the latest update, should I say, that's currently out at the time of this video. It was apparently just a security patch for Feb. That was it, all right? They didn't say it's going to do anything for the cameras. I hope that Xiaomi does not leave this model high and dry like they did with the, what one was it? The Mi 11 Ultra. And the 10 Ultra, those ones were just kind of left high and dry. And then the 13 as well has had some updates. Okay, SafetyNet check, did that. And yes, it gets a pass. So banking apps and things should be all working fine. We do have a Widevine level 1. And I can confirm Netflix is in full HD. And we do have, with this model here, you can see Dolby Vision, HDR10, HDR10 Plus, HLG. Camera2 probe, API probe. Level 3, which is a full support, but this you wouldn't really be using that. You need to use the stock camera app, especially with this phone, with all the options. You're not going to get it with third-party camera apps. 5G, tested the speeds, and pretty bad, not that great. With my other phones, I can get about 80 megabits per second downloads and uploads. For some reason, it's a little slower, so that's one thing I wanted to point out too, that you might not get the fastest kind of speeds compared to the global model. Just be aware of that. And Antutu version 10.2.3 shows that we've got a fast phone here. Very quick indeed. It can go over 2 million points there for the score. And you see that it did heat up 12.1 degrees. I felt the phone getting extra hot. I was using the performance mode activated via the battery settings. Finally, storage speeds, UFS 4.0, 512 gigabytes worth. Very good. We're getting over 4,000 for sequential reads. Sequential writes just over 3,000. And very good random access speeds. They are some of the best I have seen, well over 1,000 there. So there are no bottlenecks with this at all. It really doesn't have any because the storage is not going to slow it down and definitely not that chipset. And then stressing it out, pushing it really hard with the Wildlife Extreme Stress Test. That goes for 20 minutes. You can see that it drops down here the stability to 73.2%. So we're looking at a 26.8% drop in performance from the top score to the lowest. Temperatures, well, it gets very hot. It gets up to 51 degrees Celsius. And I felt this when gaming, that especially the frame and then the back of it gets really warm. And I don't really think that this synthetic leather and having the case on too is going to help, of course, with those thermals. It's an insulator there, and it'll probably build up a little bit of heat from that. Now, charge time at 90 watts, very good. 34 minutes to go from 16% to 100%. And battery life, so far in my testing that I've done, I tried to run the PC Mark fixed test that I always do, but it keeps crashing. But you're looking at around about 8.5 hours of on-screen time. That's for the light test. Now, gaming, I managed to go through that battery gaming in about 5 hours. And using the camera a lot yesterday when I was taking all my camera samples and everything, I chewed through this battery in only 6 hours. So battery life is looking average. It doesn't look amazing, depending on what you're doing. But I think most people should be able to make it through a full day with the Xiaomi 14 Ultra. And this was asked about Wi-Fi calls. Yes, they do work. You can see Wi-Fi calling here. You can see it's Spain HD, and the quality is very good. So if you like your Wi-Fi calls, then this phone has it, which is really good. And you can record with the Chinese ROM version that I have here, the calls. But I don't believe you can record the calls with the global version. Pretty sure you can't. So call quality is excellent that I'm hearing out of this, both with the Wi-Fi calls on and off, just normal SIM calls good too. Haptics is really nice, big strong pulses. And I'm going to play you also now a track here from this, which is NCS, and it's non-copyright songs. That's the reason I'm using it. I don't like the genre of music or this track or anything like that. But let's have a listen to what it sounds like. So sound comes from here and here, and I'll make sure that I do have this set, yes, to 100% volume.
It's one of a kind.
Gaming performance, well, no surprises that it's as expected for the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3. It's very good. Runs really well. And you do have their game turbo. So if you wanted to run that, you just simply need to swipe here from the side. It brings it up, and there's a few other things you can adjust. So I've got it in balanced. I noticed in balance, I sometimes get some frame dips down to 46 frames per second. In performance, it really does reduce that. But overall, all the games out there, they're going to be playable, play really well on this. And yeah, it does get hot to the touch. Certainly heats up after gaming a bit. You feel it around the back here, around the frame especially too. It will get warm when you're gaming. Oh, accelerometer, there we go. A little bit slow then. So with our cameras here, this is the front-facing 32 megapixel camera. Yes, there is finally, and has been now since the previous model, 4K. It took them a long time, but they finally got there after years and years and years falling behind the competition. Now, what I've noticed with the front-facing vlog footage is it does tend to overexpose a tad. And in fact, I see that generally with these cameras, that you could always turn down that exposure a bit, and it needs it just with the default settings. So 4K 30 here at the moment. You've got 4K 62 as well, the front-facing camera with electronic image stabilization, and the quality is decent, but look at the way it's exposing the clouds here. I know it's trying to expose my face, and it's doing a good job of that, but the background's a little bit blown out, and that's why I think that the exposure needs some tweaks. And that's what I'm generally seeing here, is that the firmware is quite early, especially the camera optimization. It does need a bit of work, as you'll see. So this is our rear 50 megapixel camera, very good stabilization. I noticed that the newer 50 megapixel sensor, 1-inch Type 1, seems to have better, I think, optical image stabilization than the previous generation. So I can go over to the ultra wide on the fly if shooting 4K 30. If you're in an 8K mode, you can't. Now there's no time limit with 8K, which is good. I'll go over to the 3.2 times optical. You can see that transition. Well, it could be a little bit smoother, but it's quick, it's fast, doesn't look too bad. And I go over to the 5 times periscopic camera. Looking at the castle here. Now there is a bit of wind, so we're going to have some wind noise, and I can zoom in a little bit more, take it up to 10 times here, and you can see, of course, the quality has degraded somewhat, quite a bit. I wouldn't go over 10 times, even that's not looking that great. This is now 8K footage. Now you can shoot 8K with the other camera, so the 3.2 optical and the 5 times. But what I've noticed though is that those zoom cameras, they don't seem to be a proper 8K, at least not to me. It looks like upscaled 4K. And here, this has a bit of a crop to it, okay? So it's not a full proper 8K, but it's got the electronic image stabilization. Now the footage does look a little bit more detailed, but not by much compared to 4K. And I noticed that when you pan around, you will maybe see a few little judders and some drop frames, even though when I look at media info, it's 30 frames per second. It seems to still happen in a little bit more if you're shooting 8K 30 frames per second and you pan around. But good to see they added the 30 frames per second option, because before with Xiaomi, it was only 24 frames per second, which looked a little choppy to me. This is 8K now with a 3.2 times camera, and if you do happen to look at this on the 8K or even 4K TV, you'll notice that it doesn't quite look native. I don't think this is a proper 8K resolution. This is only just an assumption I have here, but I do believe it's just upscaled, maybe from like 4K. 8K now, 5 times optical, looking at the castle of Denia here. Now I could apply, and whoa, a little bit of zoom here, but I can't swap over those cameras on the go, so that's 7 times 8K. Stabilization is reasonably good, very good. Main camera has the best stabilization. Periscopic, probably the worst.
Oh, this is really cool. The 4K 120 frames per second slowed to 30 frames per second. Check it out. Over to still. So this is the ultra wide, and it looks alright, but you crop in and, well, not really that good. But main camera, very good, lots of detail, contrast colors looking okay. This is our 3.2 times optical, very nice, clean looking shot, if maybe a bit over sharpened a little, and the 5 times optical. But it's not all bad news for that ultra wide. If you happen to take a shot this time in the sun before it was overcast, it looks a lot better, a lot sharper. Super clear photo. I like what I'm seeing. Colors are good. This is the vibrant preset. And this is our 5 times optical zoom camera. Just look at all those details there. Great. My favorite has been the macro mode that can take some really good looking shots. You can see even dust and all sorts of detail. Really good there. Now you can choose between a depth of field being shallow or extended too. I did find it good for taking photos like this close up here of, for example, product shots, that you get a lot of details and really nice attractive looking background blur. Low light photos without turning on the night shot mode have a lot of noise to them, but some of the other shots that I used with the night mode on looked pretty good. Although the contrast here, the blacks tend to be a little bit grayish and not a deep black. I don't really know what's going on here. This was the Leica vibrant mode, so there's still again a little bit of room there for tweaking and improving things. Certainly with camera software updates, they can get a lot more out of these sensors. But comparing it to the Vivo X100 Pro, low light performance, I think the Vivo definitely pulls ahead. It has less noise, the images look a little sharper and clearer too. Like Authentic versus Zeiss Natural, there is a difference, and more true to life I found to be the X100 Pro with the Zeiss optimization here, and the colors of the red flower slightly better, I think, with the X100 Pro. It's close, but there is a difference. Shallow depth of field was sometimes working against the Xiaomi, so it's got a very narrow field of focus, and I tapped on the same point, and you can see that the focus is actually not where I tapped, right in the center. The Vivo got this. The Vivo got the different shades of yellow, less clipping, overall better from the Vivo X100 Pro. It takes superior photos, I feel. I also did find that the zoom shots with the Vivo X100 Pro are better than the Xiaomi. This is at 30 times zoom. Both of them are terrible, okay? But there is one that's slightly better, and that is the Vivo. The Xiaomi is using some AI technique to make this 30 times look a little better, but in fact it doesn't seem to really do much. Then finally, portrait shots with the Xiaomi 14 Ultra. I like them, they're not bad, the stitching's good. However, they're a little soft, some people may like this. I did a comparison, as you can see, compared to the X100 Pro again, and I prefer the X100 Pro portraits. Everyone I've asked also comments the same. I think the skin tones look more pleasant, it's a little bit sharper, doesn't look as soft, and overall just a more pleasant portrait.
Build quality of the phone, excellent. Speakers do sound great. I mentioned they could be just a tad louder. That's me being fussy and comparing it to some other phones. It isn't the loudest, but they sound very good. The screen, brilliant, but not the brightest. I really doubt that 3000 nit claim. It was Xiaomi that started doing these, while in HDR you can get XYZ brightness, yet no one can actually ever seem to measure that, although I can't with my meters that I've got here. But we'll take their word for it. It's bright, yes. But when I compared it, as you saw from that clip, next to the iPhone, next to the Samsung, it certainly was not the brightest to my eyes there. So there's something going on. But anyway, the cameras. Let's talk about the cameras. It's all about the cameras now with these phones. Well, especially when you call them Ultra, especially when you give them this grip and you partner with Leica, of course. So initial first impressions were a tad bit disappointing. And whoa, hang on, Xiaomi fanboys in the comments. Hang on. I'm coming from this, which is the Vivo X100 Pro, okay? And this is, I still think it's the top dog, and from what I've seen so far, it still is. I still think it does the best macro shots, best color reproduction too as well, especially with the Zeiss Natural mode versus the Leica, what do they call it? Leica Authentic, sorry. Yeah, they're good, but I'd say this one's more closer to true to life from what Vivo has optimization here. They have that floating lens as well, with the 4.3 times optical zoom camera that I think is a little bit better in terms of zoom that you get out of the 5 times optical with the Xiaomi. The Xiaomi's got a lot of promise, but I'm seeing some early firmware issues, camera optimize issues, really. That is slight overexposure on literally all of the photos that I've seen, especially portraits. Could be a China ROM thing. The Chinese do like to have really white, ghostly looking skin for some reason in portraits. Could be that, so Global will probably tone down on that. Video quality I find to be good, but I find that the zoom video quality a little disappointing, especially when you put it into 8K mode. You'd expect more definition, expect more details, and really it just adds more noise and looks like upscaled 4K, which is what I'm assuming it actually probably is with those zoom cameras. Good to have those options with all the video, Dolby Vision, HDR, 4K 120 frames per second, it goes on and on. There's so many options. And even depth of field you can adjust. You can have a shallow depth of field or an extended depth of field when you are in the macro mode, which is good to see. You get some good results with that. But like the 13 Ultra, I find it a little hit and miss, those cameras. I find the point of focus is very narrow, your focal point there, and I often find where I tap to focus, and you'll see this in my camera comparison I'm working on, will actually not be the point I tapped on. So it's why it's a little hit and miss, I find. Some of those photos, you look at them and zoom in and go, that's not quite as good as I was hoping it would be, considering it's the new generation of 1-inch type sensor, the partnership with Leica, yada, 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 yada. All the lenses, all that's gone into it. So at the moment, what I'm feeling, it feels a bit overhyped. It feels like just a incremental bump up from the 13 Ultra. Slightly better focus, better options. Yes, it's all good to see this, the 4K with the front video. It is an excellent phone, don't get me wrong, but what I'm seeing is, I think, stills at least, this is the king, this is the X100 Pro, and they still have the X100 Ultra to come. And no, Vivo has not paid me for this video, neither has Xiaomi, no one has.